Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take on your rigged election results. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books, Wokistan, a novel, and its sequel, Hollywoke, another novel. Also, check out the Pineys books 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, available at Amazon.com. Ebook, trade paperback, Kindle Unlimited is free. Links in the description. Let's get into the election today. The big news: AG Barr, no evidence of fraud that would have changed election outcome. AG Barr is out. Now, a lot of people are screaming at him, you're not doing your job, blah, blah, blah. Look, hate to tell you, if he was going to do anything, he would have done it already. He would have done it, I think, weeks ago. He would have opened up cases on this. Why isn't he? Again, speculation, but it could be that, the positive, optimistic speculation would say, oh, Trump's got it in the bag. AG Barr's already seen that evidence, and he's just waiting for Trump to sort of, drop the other shoe, and then we're off to the races, and people are going to jail. More likely, it's political, and he's trying to endear himself to the incoming president, Joe Biden, and he doesn't want to look he wants to look impartial, and so he's playing hardball by saying, give me more evidence or I'm not doing anything. The FBI took in some evidence from a guy by the name of Matt, I forget his last name, but what he did, they did these phone calls, and they called up voters and basically checked on them, compared their names to people who voted and voted a certain way, and compared it to the person and asked them whether or not they voted or if they moved or whatever, and they found widespread fraud. So widespread fraud does exist. Now, they don't have enough to say flip over the election, but there's certainly enough to warrant a massive investigation. So when they called, they found people who had moved. And Steven Crowder, believe it or not, was one of these people. He used to live in Michigan. He moved to, I think, Texas. And when they called up, they found that he got a ballot mailed to him in Michigan, and it was filled out in his name, and he voted for somebody in Michigan too. And that, I would say, is clear evidence that, there's shenanigans going on. And I think we all know what it is. It's people in these areas where massive cheating happens. It tends to be populous centers. They get lists of people. They find out the list of people who moved, and they get absentee ballots for them, and they fill them out, and they send them in because those people have moved, and what are the chances of them coming back to the state and even knowing what happened? Same thing for someone who's died, or someone who's in maybe a nursing home or homeless or whatever. You just find people who are dead, incapacitated, or out of state, or some combination thereof. And if they already got a ballot, you make sure they get another one, and you fill it out on their behalf, and that's total fraud. So this essentially a phone survey, found out a lot of stuff, and then the FBI questioned it because, that's a real crime, and that's something they could look into, and at least, they'll capture like probably half a dozen people who, got some sort of ballot rigging game, like that woman Project Veritas caught, right? And they'll put some small timers in prison for 40, 50 years. Guys who have been doing this for like 10 years. They've been gaming the system on behalf of various people for money. And they should go to jail. They should do hard time. You shouldn't mess around with elections. That's hard time. And you need to give them severe penalties, so the next time somebody thinks about doing that, or even the people they don't catch go, oh man, I can't do that kind of time, man. And they quit, and they don't do it. That would be the idea anyway. Unfortunately, politicians and people in government, they make a lot of promises, and sometimes they can keep them and sometimes they can't. So if they say you're a governor, you say, oh, I'll just pardon you, or don't worry, I got your back. You'll have to do a few years if you get caught, but I'll make sure you're in a nice cushy place or whatever. Yeah, and then they just don't do it. So food for thought: don't cheat in elections, don't commit crimes. But this is the thing. It's like, without AG Barr coming to bat for the president, and now Pennsylvania is a problem too, because the Republicans said, well, we're going to go in the legislature and we're going to try to convince everybody to take back the power of appointing electors from, I believe it's the AG they have there, or Secretary of State or something. I don't know. They keep appointing all these people in all these states because these politicians don't want to do anything. So, but the legislative session is now done in Pennsylvania. So the only way they'd be able to do it in time is if they call everybody back for a special session, and it would have to last 3 days in order for them to even do this process legally. The chances of that happening are super low, super low. Now, they still have chances with the various lawsuits that are in Pennsylvania. Those could go to the Supreme Court, but the scuttlebutt on the internet, not from left-wing media, but from Trump supporters and other people in the law, it seems really unlikely SCOTUS would take it up at this time. So without SCOTUS, and I said before, he's got to get the SCOTUS to win this. Without SCOTUS, there's not going to be anybody to make this call. If they bounce it back to the lower court, probably won't rule in favor. And even if they do, it'll bounce back up to SCOTUS, and who knows. So they got to get to SCOTUS with the Pennsylvania lawsuits. And there's apparently 2 of them. One of them is separate from the Trump team. It's arguing on constitutional grounds that the mail-in ballots are a void, essentially. And then there's Trump's team. Now, Trump's team has been half-assed in the fraud charges, but that may be on purpose in order to keep getting the case bounced back out, in order so they could rush to SCOTUS as quickly as possible. So that may be part of the strategy, that they half-assed it up until now, and it also gives them more time to accumulate evidence, but that they'll present the real fraud evidence in front of SCOTUS, where it'll matter and the decision will be, absolute. But again, tough. And Rudy's also talking about in his podcast, which if you haven't seen, you should watch. He explains that they want to bundle up all these cases and then hit the Supreme Court. I'm not sure how that works. That is like way beyond my pay grade. I mean, Rudy made it sound easy, so hopefully he knows what he's talking about. So there's been other stuff like, and these are all the headlines here at Gab. Whistleblowers allege ballots illegally cross state lines, ballot backdating, digital manipulation, I believe. Excuse me, this is all from Arizona. Yeah. There was a ton of testimony. This is Arlington, Virginia. I mean, it's just crazy. The crazy amount of stuff. The same old story. Republicans being kicked out of places. Ballots being counted multiple times. Ballots mysteriously just showing up in truckloads, all for Biden. You pretty much know the script now. So when is somebody going to do something? Well, so far, the only people who have done anything are the rhinos, and all they've done is certified the election results. So we got certified votes in Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. So when is this going to turn around? Is the question. Is it going to turn around? If it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen this week. They got this in Georgia. A Dominion worker allegedly caught manipulating voter data in Georgia. I've seen this video. It's not that compelling because you can't really see what he's doing. But the one thing you can see is that he's connected to the internet, which is illegal in Georgia. So at the very least, this guy is probably going to jail. This individual. Whether or not that proves the state is rigged, that's a stretch, I think. I don't know. But it certainly proves some malfeasance. I mean, watch the video. It's clear that he's on the internet. And he's on a laptop, which shouldn't be in that room if you're not supposed to be on the internet. They also had multiple witnesses that, you know, are saying these machines were connected to the internet when they shouldn't have. And if the Frankfurt story has any legs at all, every state would have had to, at some polling place, had a connection to the internet. Maybe not the red states. Maybe they just threw up their hands and said, well, we're going to lose those anyway. Let's not forget about it. Maybe it was only on the states they needed to change. It would save them time and effort. That would make sense. You don't need to monitor everything in order to just commit voter malfeasance in just these states. So, whatever. But there was just tons of evidence that came out of Arizona. There's more coming out today in Michigan. You know, if you watch the hearings, they look pretty devastating. The problem is, no one's really watching these hearings. The news isn't covering it. You know, Rudy's doing his best, but they're just blasting him in the media. You know, unless these, you know, it's down to where it was down to Hillary Clinton. The electors have to be either switched by the state legislatures, or, you know, they have to revolt. And it depends on what you need, like 30 plus votes, electoral votes, to flip or be canceled for Biden. So he cannot win the electoral vote. He's got to get under 270. If he's under 270, then it'll go to a contingent election and Trump will win. So I think Trump still has a shot at that. He could make his case in the public square, keep saying fraud, 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 keep doing these hearings, keep putting this stuff out, and say, look at all this fraud. So people have to at least think twice about, you know, certifying these votes or moving forward with it. I mean, the pressure needs to be put on these Republicans in these state legislatures. They have to know that. And I've already been talking to some of the Trump supporters. They're like, oh, I'm never going to vote for a Republican again. They feel utterly betrayed already. And, you know, it's still not over, but they're mad. They're furious. And they ain't going to be any happier in the years to come under Biden. So you could pretty much forget their vote, and you could pretty much forget the Republican Party if they don't stand up now. I mean, they got a shot at maybe capturing one more Senate seat and holding on by the fingernails and for the next 2 years. But if they lose the Senate or don't win any more seats, if they don't win one seat in Georgia, they're screwed. You'll have total Democratic rule and, you know, a president who basically is a meat puppet, if he even stays in that long. I think Nancy's all teed up to kick him out as soon as possible once he gets in. So, you know, in terms of the election, you know, at this point, it's just so far above my pay grade. I don't know what's going to happen anymore. There's so much evidence. I look at it and I go, how can people even call this a fair election? I mean, you've got hundreds and hundreds of witnesses saying I was kicked out of the room, or I saw people counting votes twice, or I saw improper ballots here, and here. It's just like, and then the response from the judges are like, well, that's not enough, or, well, did you see it? Like, were you standing right over the person? Like, they put up a bar of evidence that's so high, it's not normal. I mean, the fact that these people kicked out the Republican observers, um, is and have no good reason for it. It'd be different if they had a reason for it, but they don't. I mean, they kept in the Democrats and kicked out the Republicans. How is that fair? How is that fair? It's just it's a sure sign. Now that's not proof, but it's certainly not fair. The fact that they're not giving them, they should give the Republicans the benefit of the doubt because of that. Because of that. Certainly, if it was the reverse, I think people would be saying the same thing, right? If you had a state in which the Republicans kicked the Democratic observers out, I don't think you'd ever hear the end of that story. I think you'd be hearing about it from now until the end of time. Remember the Republicans when they kick people out in this state? Like, certainly they portrayed the Republicans as overreaching goons back in the 2000s when Bush did it in Florida, and I was against it. I was totally against what the Bushites did in Florida. They basically bullied their way to the presidency. But in their defense, the Democrats just didn't want it. They didn't want to fight. They just let them have it because they were playing politics. They were like, let Bush have it. We'll come back in 4 years. He's a one-termer at best. How'd that work out? So, if it's going to happen, it's got to happen this week, Trump. It's got to happen this week. Something needs to break this week, big. And I know it's darkest before the dawn, so maybe a week from now I'll be laughing about this, going, "Oh man, look how tense I look," or whatever. But in a Biden presidency, like I said, it's not going to be all bad. There'll still be room to breathe. Hopefully, we're not going to turn into a communist dictatorship overnight. It'll just really suck, and all the taxes will be very high. So, if you're thinking about moving, I would hold off at least until we figure out who's going to end up president. Trump's chances are even lower now, but he still has a path to victory. I don't think, by the way, he should declare martial law, and this is one of the bad signs. Lynn Wood, one of the lawyers, not under Trump, but he has a lawsuit about the election on behalf of Trump. He suggested on Twitter that the president should declare a limited martial law. I'm against that. Here's why. There's no guarantee Trump will live to lift the martial law. There's no guarantee he'll lift it at all. And once you give politicians power, even one you consider as noble as Trump, if you're a Trump supporter, you never get it back. It's a very rare politician that gives back power. George Washington was the only one. He was the only one. He could have been king, and he said no. And you could argue, well, maybe he was too old. He didn't have a son. That's why. No. George Washington was an unusual man. He was a man of great honor. I think Trump is a lot more honorable than people give him credit for, and I don't think he would seize the power and continue to grow it. But I do think it's a huge danger because, I think his second term could be so tumultuous he might not give it back. And that might make sense under those terms, but the next guy definitely won't. Trust me on that. If anybody but Trump, and Trump is only a 50-50 chance he would turn off the light. It's a very tempting thing, power. It corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I say no, don't go martial law. But if I'm being totally honest, martial law would be better than communism. So, but communism isn't coming today. It's coming 20 years from now. It slowly creeps in, and the Chinese aren't going to roll in with tanks and destroy us. They're just going to keep poking our soft underbelly and going, aha, you bunch of racists, why they're, one of the most racist countries on earth, and why their kids go to school and people can go out and do whatever the hell they want, kind of, under communist China anyway. They're laughing at us because, a lot of this chaos was implemented by them behind the scenes. A lot of it's on us too, and people in various parties, but it is definitely suckered by China because why wouldn't they? I mean, this is totally good for them. If the U.S. has upends itself, or better yet, has a civil war, that's like a godsend to the Chinese Communist Party. They'll be top dogs, and they're headed that way now. So we got to get it together. If we don't, the Chinese will laugh us right into the dustbin of history if they aren't already. I think with Trump, we have a shot of pulling out of the dive. With Biden, we are really, really shooting ourselves in the foot. So hang on, Trump fans. It's not over yet, but prepare yourself for a dark winter, just in case.